Let's return now to the US demands for Australia to boost our defence spending to 3.5% of GDP. Joining me for his thoughts and analysis is Director of Strategic Analysis Australia, Adjunct Fellow at the Institute of Public Affairs and a former Deputy Secretary of Strategy in the Defence Department, Peter Jennings. Peter, what is your assessment, first of all, on what Hegseth has said to Richard Marles in Singapore, that request and that demand?
I think the Americans have been very patient with us for a long time, Kieran, behind the scenes worried that Australia is not putting enough effort into defence. The 3.5% that Hegseth talks about, that kind of matches what the Americans themselves are spending in terms of their economy. And I think the message, very politely delivered at this stage, is we need to get more serious about the strategic world that we're facing right now.
What about the expenditure on AUKUS and measures like that, which obviously comes at a decent price tag itself?
Well, you know, when Scott Morrison announced AUKUS in 2021, he always had the thought that that was going to be extra in terms of the level of defence spending. But the extra never came. It never came under the Liberal government. It certainly hasn't come under the coalition, under the Labor government. And so what's happening is that the cost of AUKUS is now hollowing out current Defence Force capability. Labor's making savings to pay for those future AUKUS submarines, but at the price of the strength of the current Defence Force. Now, that's just not sustainable.
I know this sort of gets into the politics a little, but as the Prime Minister is saying, we will decide what we need on our terms. He's got to go and meet Donald Trump in a few weeks from now. There's this sort of diplomatic / political dance that he's also got to play to not be seen to be dragged to the outcome by the President of the United States, who, to be frank, is not that popular in Australia.
Yes, I agree with that. I think it's a great shame that it has taken this intervention from Hegseth to get our government thinking more seriously about what it needs to do for defence. It's been resisting what I think is a call across that small group of people, admittedly, that looks at Australian defence to say that we now have to do more. Of course, it should be on Australian terms and it should meet Australian needs. But Australia doesn't need to be reducing the size and capability of the current Defence Force, which is what Anthony Albanese is doing. And so he's got to get serious. Let's do it on our terms. And what a shame that it's taken an intervention from Hegseth to bring us to this point, but we need to get cracking now.
On another development overnight, quite an amazing attack on Russian bombers by Ukraine. They do surprise, don't they, with their ingenuity and their resilience, the Ukrainians?
Well, President Trump was wrong when he said to Ukraine's President Zelensky in the Oval Office, "You have no cards." The Ukrainians have plenty of cards, and I think if they're capable of launching as remarkable attack as this, what else have they got up their sleeve? What could they possibly do? The good news is this: it severely damages Russia's attack to launch cruise missiles against Ukraine. Secondly, it puts Ukraine into a position of strength going into negotiations tomorrow in Turkey. If you're going to negotiate with Vladimir Putin, you can't do it from a position of weakness. And I think what this is showing is there's a lot of fight still left in Ukraine, and that's something that the US should actually acknowledge.
Yeah, indeed. And I saw comparisons made with the Israeli and Mossad attack on Hezbollah and that pager attack. The surprise impact of this drone attack has given us a reminder, I guess, of modern warfare as well. Are there things that Australia could learn from this sort of strike?
Well, no one should assume that any Australian Defence Force base is well protected, particularly against a type of surprise attack which an enemy might want to launch. And in a conflict, we have to be mindful that this type of warfare is now going to be the mark going forward. You know, there is no secure Russian base, for example. I think that's one message that Putin should be taking from this attack. But don't imagine that we're any better off here against sabotage or espionage. You know, we need to think again about our own defence, how we protect our Defence Force bases, how we protect our cities. That's the message that comes from this attack.
Peter Jennings, great to get your insights as always. Thank you.
Thanks, Kieran.